So we all got through this fence and ran towards where it had appeared to land.
Tanya and I and this other girl, we were over the fence. Tanya was in the lead and we ran towards where it was coming down. Tanya. I lost sight of Tanya. She was in front of me. A couple of girls got there faster than me. I was a bit slow. And they actually passed out. And apparently it did land because when we got there, there was a great big round patch of like flattened yellow, almost burnt, although I'm a bit sketchy on that. I can't remember if it was really burnt or whether it was just flattened, but it was sort of yellow and the grass was all flattened in a swirly sort of a pattern. Before I got there, the disc came back up again, so I stopped chasing it. We looked up and we just saw this saucer type thing taking off, and it seemed to turn side on and just disappear into thin air.
Well, what about your friend Tanya?
I believe she did see it on the ground.
She did see it on the ground?
So I was given to believe, yes. But I went back to school and Tanya went back to school and basically had gone all to pieces. There was definitely an ambulance on the oval and I was told that she'd been taken away in the ambulance, and that was the last time I ever saw her.
Wow.
She was just gone and she never came back to school.
Tanya wasn't the only person who saw the craft on the ground. Before they headed over to the Grange, Victor Zakruzny says 2 objects landed in a grassy paddock where a street is now.
All the kids were hanging on the fence there. There's quite a few kids there. It's a high fence, and I got up to the top there, and all you could see is 2 discs, one there and one bit further away, probably 3 metres apart. I could hear somebody in the background saying, "Stay away, don't jump the fence," and so I said, "Oh, bugger, I'm going over the fence." The craft probably would have been about there, and there was another one set back a bit on an angle, probably just about there. There's a few kids walking around there, and I was the only one on this side. I got up to it to want to touch it, and it was, well, you could feel heat about 1 metre away coming from it. It was pretty warm or hot, and within a minute or so, it just, both of them just lifted up at the same time, about this height. And I seen, that was breathtaking watching that, and then it just gradually lifted up, and then went off towards the pines. I did a rough sketch of it.
Wow, look at that. This is the view from underneath.
That's underneath. There's no seams, no joints, it's just smooth metal. Normally an aircraft has sheet metal, pipe rivets, or all that sort of stuff there. This looked like come out of a mould or something like that, all one smooth piece of metal. It was just incredible. It's just something like you see in the movies.
But this is more than just cinema. If we look at the possibilities for this story, they are extraordinary. We're talking about the possibility of life coming from another place and just appearing one day in their midst, and then leaving again and leaving everybody with so many questions, but with a new openness to the beyond. If I'd been at Westall on that day, I would like to have raced after that flying saucer and gotten so close to it, to have held it in my hands. But the adults at Westall High School saw it differently.
That afternoon, our principal called a special assembly and told us all not to talk about it.
All I know is the whole school was told off. The headmaster says, "All you kids are nuts. It's a weather balloon. Don't talk about it."
I was prepped to tell the students that what they'd seen didn't exist. We weren't allowed to leave the school, at least I wasn't. My job was to walk up and down the corridors and make sure that all students were in their rooms. I was walking back from the West End. There was a confrontation between Mr. Sambleby, Barbara Robbins, and a man I'd never seen before. I thought it was a police uniform, but it was just dark blue. It was demanded that she hand over not the film, but the entire camera.
I was near the gate and the police had arrived.
There were journalists outside. The police are being caught in to keep the journalists away.
We were told that we weren't allowed to speak to the media in school grounds. After school finished, there was a TV crew outside the school grounds, so we undertook an interview with them.
Everyone took off onto the oval.
Now, I can't remember whether it was a principal or a school representative that came out and ordered us to go home and the film crew to leave.
And I'd actually been giving an interview to Channel 9, and the policeman actually walked up to them and said, "Stop filming and you go back into the school ground." Okay, so that's what I did. I was 12 and a half years old.
Because I was a mischievous sort of person, I was always getting into trouble. I had detention for actually appearing on the show, and then I got detention again at a later date after my picture and story was in the Dandenong Journal. So I didn't go unpunished, but it was worth it.
I now had two new leads to follow, Channel 9 and the Dandenong Journal. I rang Channel 9 first. They searched for a flying saucer story, and there it was. Now all I have to do is find the can with the matching number. But oddly, there was nothing there. I was absolutely devastated, and nobody had any idea where it had gone. It's very frustrating, but the good news is the Dandenong Journal does still exist, and I'm told it's here in the library. It's the only written account I've heard of from the period, so it's really precious.
Westall High School. Something obviously happened. Some people apparently didn't want the kids talking about it, and that raises all sorts of questions. Why couldn't it have been discussed? Why couldn't it have been talked about openly? And why couldn't anybody find any more information about what it was?
The headmaster, Frank Sambleby, is a key part of the story. He's passed away, but I hope his children, Max and Gail, can shed some light on his behaviour.
Hello, Shane here. Anybody home?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Max?